Welcome everyone to Meditation Mount. We are in Ojai, California, and this is View from the Mount for October. And our theme today is walking the middle path, navigating a wise course between the pull of the poles. So let's begin by just welcoming each other. We're gathered from around the world and intentionally bring ourselves together. And we do this by standing inside the loving silence of the heart. So let's take a few gentle breaths to bring ourselves present. We become aware of our breathing. We focus first on the physical body. Become aware of any tensions that we may be holding. And then on the out-breath, we release them. And we breathe in deep relaxation. And then our world of feelings, our emotional body, as we breathe out, we release any tensions that we may be holding. And breathe in a sense of calmness, of equilibrium. Then as we breathe out, focusing on the mental body, we allow any extraneous thoughts just to be moved through. Expelled, so that our mind becomes clear and open. And as we breathe in a sense of serenity. So our personality body, which is the incarnated agent of the soul, is now relaxed, calm, and poised. So we're now ready to enter the space of the heart. Do so. Stand inside your own heart, and there at the center, both visualize and feel the flame of eternal love that burns at the heart of your being. This is a spark of the one life, our connection with creation. And we're aware of many souls gathered in virtual space together, and we connect heart to heart to heart. And we weave together a matrix of community and communion. And inside this group heart, we know ourselves to be one, in resonance with each other and in resonance with the one life in whom we live and move and have our being. So let's bring ourselves back into our waking consciousness and be present for each other, aware that as this is a live broadcast, we do stand in the same energetic field. So whatever is happening in our individual lives is affecting our group life now. So before we dive into today's theme, several people have asked me to clarify the statement from last month that society is in free fall and will most likely hit the rocks very soon. It was a strong statement, and several people were wondering what was behind it. So I said, reading the signs, it does appear that we will be hitting the rocks. And there are three possibilities. And I said these three possibilities may be present simultaneously. Depending on the degree of spiritual maturity and resilience acquired and embodied as individuals and as a global community, I said that we're going to either bounce, bruise, or break when we hit the rocks. I said bounce as a result of our lives already having an upward trajectory towards living and embodying spiritual values and embracing soul qualities. And then I said bruise, because although we are full of aspiration and goodwill, we remain to some degree, and I speak for myself here, still attached to material and emotional needs, and some of our belief systems are less than flexible. Therefore, a bumpy ride is guaranteed, and a bumpy ride can cause bruising. And then the third was break. And I said that whenever personal identity, security, and survival are tied up with the preservation of form that takes precedence over the liberation and expression of the indwelling life, it is inevitable that we go down with the ship. So what I'd like to do is to go into this a little deeper, because it does lead into what we're doing today. So why is this happening now? Why are we experiencing this great tumult, turmoil, transition? So let me offer a perspective from the ageless wisdom teachings. At the top, you see this tuning fork. And this is the note of creation. So when the note is sounded, as it ripples through substance, substance responds and takes shape, takes form. This is how forms are created. So in the beginning was the word of creation, and it called forth in response to its formula all that we see around us as created forms. So here we have our planet Earth, which is also a living being. And just like us, there are times when we take another turn of the spiral, when the note of deep purpose and destiny is sounded anew. And every time the note is sounded anew, it has effect on the current forms. Now, if you look at the form on the left, it says strengthening of new patterns. So if my life, to some degree, or to a greater degree, is aligned with my soul, and therefore I've organized myself to be a vehicle of the soul on earth, this incarnated agent, therefore the sounding of this new note will simply strengthen me because I'm already in alignment. And this corresponds to what I refer to as bounce. So if we look at the center section, I think most of us will find ourselves in this center section. We have the aspiration, we have the goodwill, we have the intent to be in alignment with the highest good for all. And so when this note sounds, it shakes us up. It has a cathartic effect on us, because it's not going to destroy us. It's going to shake us up and purify us and bring us into deeper alignment. And this is the process of purification. And its purification can be on a physical level, a physical purification, emotional, where we need to work through all the pain and suffering that are being held within the emotional body, or it could be a purification of the mind, which is a releasing and letting go of that which we hold on to so dearly, and maybe too dearly, that it blocks the flow of what needs to come through in this new dispensation. So this is the middle section, and the purification phase corresponds to what I referred to as bruise. So this is where we get bruised or we get purified. Now, if you look at the right-hand side there, it says the death of old forms. It's pretty self-explanatory. When a form cannot respond to a note, it no longer receives the life energy. Life energy is withdrawn. And when life energy is withdrawn from a form, it dies. We're in the autumn, the fall season here in the Northern Hemisphere. And if you look around in nature, you see the leaves on the trees turning yellow, turning gold, and then dropping down. They've served their purpose. They've served their season. And then in spring, they'll be called forth in a new expression of themselves. So with the death of form, it's everything that is unable and unwilling to respond to the new note. And this death of form corresponds to what I referred to as break. So bounce, bruise, and break correspond to these three phases of, or effects of strengthening, purification, and death of old forms. And the reason that it's happening at the moment is because I believe a new note of purpose is being sounded deep within the consciousness of our planet. And because we are integral parts of this planet, it reverberates through us and we feel the effect. It's just like when I decide to purify my body, the cells in my body feel the effect of my decision. They detox. And in the beginning of detox, all the toxins come up and we sometimes feel much sicker before we feel healthier. So I wanted to just go into that in a little bit more depth because I realized that my statement last month sort of was strong, and it was intended to be so because I believe that's where we find ourselves at the moment. But our task is to know, how do we navigate wisely through these times? How do we make sure that we can be part of the deep response to the call of the next iteration of Gaia's destiny? And in order to do that, we have to make sure that we're purified and strengthened. So we have to go through this process of becoming a more effective agent of the soul on earth. And that's all the stuff that happens to us. That's all part of building a better vehicle of expression. So I believe that's probably sufficient to go into now, but I wanted to just name that because it did raise a lot of comments. So let's leave that now. So my plan is to seed the field with some images and some ideas, and then to pause, and I'll ask each of you to ponder this question. What are the insights, questions, and concerns that are alive in my heart and mind as I seek to navigate a wise course through life? So I'm going to ask you that question later, but I wanted to put it in the field now so that it is vibrating in the field, because I'm going to invite you to post your responses in the chat, because after my introductory remarks, we will use the input from the group that's posted in the chat to guide and direct us for the rest of our time together. This is a live broadcast, so I believe it's important that we explore this together, a living exploration. So you can, if you have it at any time in the next probably 10, 15 minutes, you can post them in the chat. Otherwise, we'll have a time when we pause, reflect, and then post. So let's enter the world of polarities. So let me read the next two slides. Polarity is a universal fact. It is inherent in cosmic manifestation It is true that the ultimate and supreme reality is the one, the absolute, the transcendent, but it can only be defined by what it is not. From the very moment that cosmic manifestation begins to unfold, duality is born. The first fundamental duality is precisely that between manifestation and the unmanifested. In the Bhagavad Gita, this is expressed in the words, having pervaded the whole universe with a fragment of myself, I remain. Having pervaded the whole universe with a fragment of myself, I remain. So in the process of manifestation, the fundamental polarity is that of spirit and matter. And Giordano Bruno, the Italian, proclaimed the synthesis of the opposites as the principal tenet of a forgotten philosophy that must be revived. He was very clear, we need to understand this. He speaks of the unifying of the opposites, of acute and obtuse angles, of heat and cold, of love and hate, of poisons and their antidotes, of concave and converse. And he said, he who wishes to know the great secrets of nature must examine and contemplate the smallest and greatest of the contrasts and opposites. Profound magic lies in knowing how to discover the contrary after having found the point of union. So what I plan to do is in a moment is to dive into that. But this is what we are faced with. There is one life, and in order for it to express, it uses, if you like, the two-ness of its oneness, its poles. And it's said that our soul has two poles. It has a masculine principle and a feminine principle. These are the two poles of a magnet. Our soul is a magnetic presence. And we know that a magnet has two poles. And in Agni Yoga, it's said that the creator is this cosmic magnet with these two poles. So everywhere in the ageless wisdom teachings, you have the one using its inherent duality to express itself in the many. So let's look at the dynamics of polarity. Let's take a look at this image. And once again, for those of you who have not been part of this series of View from the Mount before, these rather childlike images were created in 1975 in the Findhorn community in Scotland, where I was co-teaching with my colleague Francois a 3-month course on the ageless wisdom. And so I'm borrowing some of those images today. The one that you saw earlier was from that course. So we start out with polarization. The fact that electricity works, the fact that you and I can be in communion with each other is because of the tension between poles. The electric light is the result of a tension between poles. So the first thing that happens is you have polarization. And then, naturally, there is a tension created between the poles. They naturally call to each other. They're in relationship, and they build up this tension. And when the tension is built up, you can either collapse the field, or you can use that tension like a bowstring to launch yourself into the future, into something new. So you reach a point of crisis. And then, as I say, like the archer, you can imagine yourself pulling back the bow. And remember, the bow is a single piece of wood or graphite, a string attached at both ends. And it's the tension between the bowed instrument that creates the ability to fire the arrow and to find a point that is further ahead. So this is how we use polarity. So the archer is a very useful image for that. And in the Ageless Wisdom teachings, it talks about this move from polarization, tension, crisis, sweep. It moves forward. And then when it moves forward to this higher and next level, it polarizes again. And the process begins once more. Polarization, tension, crisis, sweep. And you can imagine this is how a jellyfish moves through the ocean. It's this how you swim. So how we swim energetically through life is by utilizing the power and the pull of the poles. So that's a very, very simplistic way of looking at this. This is our next slide. It's called Islands of Belief. And it's what happens when we get stuck on one pole, when we believe our belief to be the whole, and we find ourselves on an island of belief. So when we stand on our own island of belief, we've become separated and fixed in our views. So I'd like to differentiate between points of view and viewing points. So a point of view is where we currently stand, and if we only stand there, we become fixed, and we gradually have fixed opinions, and we naturally find ourselves in opposition to others who have other points of view, other opinions. There's nothing wrong with that, it's just a fact. But if we don't use that difference and tension to move us towards wholeness, we're going to go into deeper separation. And I believe that's the process that we're going through now on our planet. If you look around, there are different islands of belief where each one would tend to see itself as the true belief rather than a point of view. So how do we generate multiple viewing points? How do we walk in each other's shoes? How do we look from different perspectives and build up this holistic interpretation, build up a holographic understanding of life, rather than see it through one fixed point? Because the danger of the part dominating the whole is huge. This is a powerful image. And when I drew this, I didn't want to sort of hold back. And I believe this is what's happening without blame or judgment. I'm not blaming any nation, blaming any person. I'm stating a fact of what I'm observing. When a nation does not respect another nation or understands its culture or its place within the human family, there is a danger that it will seek to impose its identity like a monoculture upon the rest of the world. So that is what's happening at the moment. And if you look at the effects of monoculture, you can see that in nature. Many people who like to go in nature and walk in the forests actually are not walking in a real forest, they're walking in a tree plantation where the trees are of the same size, same species, same age. So most people are not used to a diverse ecosystem, and they don't understand what it means to have all these different things happening at once and realizing that each has its part to play. Each particular part is important in the degree that it can come together as one ecosystem. So when we have one part seeking to dominate the whole, this is the antithesis to holism. In fact, what we're seeing in this image are the roots of colonialism and the roots of imperialism. And this can happen at an individual level, where I seek to dominate others, or a part of me seeks to dominate myself. So I'm not just talking about nations, I'm talking about it at all levels. So this is the danger in this polarized world. where the part seeks to become the whole. In fact, when we're sick and a cell starts to expand and grow uncontrollably, it becomes a cancer. And so we have colonialism and imperialism as signs of cancer in the body of our humanity. So what is the ideal that we're seeking to build? And here's an image for us to ponder. When we respect cultural differences as vital pieces of the world picture, it helps us build a more peaceful world. And it gives an opportunity for the spirit of our common humanity to flower. So if we look at this image and realize that each nation has its own particular gift to give, each nation has its own overlighting being, its own soul, and it carries with it a great gift that only that nation or that people can give to the world. But what we don't want is that nation then to become the whole world. It is part of the world. And we see that in how our society has grown. And I won't name names, but there are certain food chains that you can find throughout the world. And you walk into one anywhere in the world, and they're the same. You know where the bathroom is, because the bathroom is always there. It is a monoculture that is spread and infected the national identity, and it changes the eating habits of the people there, etc. I'm just naming this as an example. This is not an attack on an industry. It's basically reflecting back, when we hold this particular perspective, naturally our society will look like this. But when we respect each other, and when we understand that each nation has a gift to give, we don't become polarized. So as we look at this ideal world, Nicholas Roerich, some of you know Nicholas Roerich as the artist who painted many, many wonderful paintings from the Himalayas. He was also the founder of the Banner of Peace movement. And he said, where there is peace, there is culture. Where there is culture, there is peace. So walking this middle path means embracing the polarities and finding a higher point of convergence, of synthesis, of peace. And peace here means the resolution of our differences at a higher point of convergence that serves the whole. Peace is not the cessation of war. Peace is not the absence of hostilities. Peace is reaching that point of deep synthesis where we embrace and hold all the many colors, all the many cultures, all the many expressions. So I'm going to stop now and ask us this question that I posed earlier. So take yourself back into that reflective, quiet space of the heart and answer, what are the insights, questions and concerns that are alive in my heart and mind as I seek to navigate a wise course through life? Whatever comes up for you, there's no right or wrong. This is not a competition. This is simply using what's alive in us, because it's alive in the field, as our fuel, as our food, as our way of moving forward together. So please post any responses in the chat, and we will use this to guide the remainder of our time together. And I'll take a look at the chat now. And we have Avon that says, in Libra, that's where we are now in the solar sign of Libra, dynamic equilibrium and enthusiastic wisdom are important qualities to cultivate. And in fact, the spiritual motto of Libra, which is the sun sign that we are now bathed in, says, I choose the path that lies between the two great lines of force. That is the middle path. So the theme that we're exploring today is very germane. It's very much in keeping with the energies available to us. And Paula writes, finding love and gratitude moment by moment. For me, this is the toughest because I know when I'm in a world that is in pain and suffering, I know it's the death of forms. I know it's the breakup. And I know in my heart that something new will be born, but sometimes these new shoots that are waiting to emerge have not broken through the ground. Even though I sense them in my heart, what I see around me is the dissolution of the old and the pain and the suffering. And I've mentioned this before, that we have to stand in this dual space of having deep compassion for the pain and suffering of that which is breaking apart and those who are still clinging to the old and going down with the ship. At the same time, we're being called to plant the new seeds. And it's as though we stand as gardeners, like soul gardeners. And these soul gardeners that we are being asked to become have to plant the seeds. And most likely we'll have to wear a hard hat because all around us there's masonry of the old structures falling down. So what I'm telling myself is I need to wear a hard hat, a soft heart, and because I come from England, a good pair of wellies or Wellington boots, as you probably know them. So how do we stand and finding love and gratitude moment by moment, understanding that everything that is seeking to grow, every new iteration of life is in fact an expression of love, because love is the pre-existing motivating force for all creation. It's said that we are in a cosmos that is birthed by love, and its destiny is to express love. And for those of you who are familiar with the esoteric terminology, we are in a second ray cosmos, love, wisdom. That's the big dominant ray. And everything else, the other 7 rays, are sub-rays of the second cosmic ray of love, wisdom. So when we talk about purpose, purpose is 2.1. And the role of purpose and will is to pierce a new opening for love to enter. So this whole moment by moment appreciation is important. And gratitude, as I said before, I wake up each day and do my best to remember to say thank you as the first thing upon awakening, because by being grateful, we say yes to life. We say yes and thank you so that I can enter life and life can enter me. And Karen says, being in the moment and present with others. Because in this time of isolation and separation, it's easy to withdraw, to take refuge. And when we think of taking refuge, we can either think of hiding out. You know, I'm taking refuge, I'm hunkering down, I'm going underground, I'm going into a fetal position, I'm going to stay there until the whole thing's over. Or we can say that we're taking refuge by standing together in the loving heart, in the one soul. So in Buddhist terms, taking refuge is not hiding away. It's actually standing in the blessing of the Buddha, in the blessing of the Sangha, which is the community. So what Karen is writing is, how do we create Bodhisanga with our friends, with our family, with our colleagues? How do we create, as Martin Luther King said, beloved community? So Bodhisanga and beloved community are really synonymous. So let me read some more. Thank you for posting them. Insights coming up for me, this is Lynn, has been a recent change from turning things over to the universe to finding God is within us, living for me and as me. I go within and let the higher power guide me. Now, this is very important, and a lot of people have hesitation around surrendering. I want to be in charge. You know, if I surrender, I let go. Well, the whole thing of letting go is to let go of what we currently believe ourselves to be. The problem with beliefs is that we believe that they are true and they are reality. We don't realize that beliefs are our current interpretations of what is real. And so what Lynn is saying is what we used to say, let go, let God. But it's not an external God necessarily. It's both God transcendent, the outer creator, but also God immanent, the God within. And I believe that that is another pole that we're feeling, the tension between God transcendent and God immanent. When that tension starts to build, and when it reaches a point of crisis, and when we allow it to spark, it creates in us a new consciousness, is what some people call Christ consciousness or an illumined consciousness. And that is enlightenment. And so I believe that when we surrender, we're not giving up our ability to choose. We are actually placing ourselves back into the larger life from which we came. It's the many walking the middle path back to the one. And we do this by walking the path of synthesis, which is the upper way, the middle path of Buddhism. So Santana has written, and I'm reading these for the first time, so allow me just to read them aloud for my sake and your sake. Stand in spiritual being in the center of the equal armed cross within the circle of spirit, receiving divine love and light energy from above into the heart and radiating it out from the heart, the ajna and the hands in service to all life and being. Thank you, Santana. You've given us an incredible formula, because one of the mysteries of the earth, and remember the earth has a symbol both astronomically and astrologically, as Santana says, of a cross within a circle. And the cross represents spirit manifested or buried in matter, hidden in matter, crucified. The cross is the cruciform. So the whole destiny of Gaia, our planet, is to show that spirit, the light of spirit, buried deep in the heart of matter, can reveal itself and can lift matter and reveal the light of matter. And as we know, and we've mentioned this before, the Rosicrucian tradition has this greeting, may the rose bloom on your cross. And as Santana says, when the vertical arm of alignment between spirit and matter, and when the horizontal arm of our alignment with all life, with each other, when those are equal tension, then something is stimulated at the heart of the cross. And according to the Rosicrucian tradition, a bud appears and a rose opens up. And the rose is the Western symbol equivalent to the lotus in the East for the soul. And we know that as the soul unfolds in the East, as the lotus blossom unfolds, a jewel is revealed in the center. And in the West, it's the rose. And when the rose is fully revealed, it releases this amazing perfume. And perfume is the highest expression that a flower can give. It gives beauty through its appearance, its form, but it's perfume. And we're told with sainted people, often there's a sort of a smell of roses around them. So this is what happens when you learn to stand at the center of the cross. It's a way of standing in the middle and beginning to tread the middle path and not getting caught in one pole or the other. And it's not easy, but it is our path. And the good thing is others have done it before us and are exemplars. There are those beings, those guides of humankind who have walked the path that we're walking. They've walked this middle path. They've dealt with all the issues of the pull of the poles. They've navigated their way through, and they have graduated from this classroom, and they are now wise beings. And thank God they've offered their services as mentors to us. And ask and you shall receive. So any time that we need help, we surrender. Surrender doesn't mean letting go in failure. Surrender means giving up and being willing to be part of something greater. And I know in conversations with people over the years, there's this fear, well, if I let go, then I'll lose who I am. This whole invitation to journey from I to we. And when people say, oh, I don't want to let go of my individuality, and my reply is actually, your individuality is even more important. But guess what? When you move from I to we, your individuality expands. We is a greater sense of self, a greater sense of sovereignty. So all the time we're dealing with this ability to release and let go. And that's what's happening now in our society. The forms that have served or not really served us, but we've been addicted to them, it's time to let go of them. And it's time to listen to the new note of Gaia, the new note from within our soul. And it's that new note that creates new forms. So by walking the middle path together as the Bodhisanga, as the beloved community, we have this merry band of sisters and brothers who are building a new society, building a new world together in deep communion with the other realms of life. As we've said before, if we just do this as humans, we're being speciesist. We need to realize and embrace the full spectrum that is the multidimensional ecosystem of Gaia. So walking the middle path allows us to enter into a deeper relationship with life. So I'm wondering if there are any other comments that need to be posted there. I really thank you for posting them. The other thing about having a question, questions are important. Rilke says, don't bother finding the answers. You don't want the answer now. If you live into the question and live the question each day, one day the answer will be revealed through you as you. And I've joked before that in English, you have question, quest, and iron. And an iron is a unit of energy, a charge, electrical charge. And a quest is this search for truth, for meaning, for belonging. So a question is an iron of quest. So by posing the question, we actually invite ourselves to live into the quest. And the quest is the treading of the middle path together. So I'll allow just another couple of minutes if people want to place anything else in the chat. There's no requirement. I think we've been given sufficient food for our journey today. We have a few more minutes left together. So maybe we can just breathe together and realize that as this is a live broadcast, we are a beloved community. We have been called together. We do have as our task the building of something new and more beautiful, more joyful, more just. So as we walk the middle path, we are responding to the deep call of Gaia. And this deep call contains the DNA of destiny. And so our destiny is to be co-creators with the planet. And we can only do that if we're not caught up in the poles. If we know how to utilize the poles so that we can create electric light. And when spirit and matter are in tension, creative tension inside the human experience, that does create not an electric light, but illumination, which is wisdom and enlightenment. So it's very real for me. So let's just begin to bring ourselves to close here. So we started out by realizing that we're in the middle of this incredible transition, this incredible time of change and turmoil set in motion by the sounding of the new note of purpose. Each time the note of purpose is sounded, another part of the original formula is added to it, so that each new sounding allows us to express more of the deep intent and desire of the being in whom we live and move and have our being. And that, at the deepest level, is what's causing all the unrest. causing all the stirrings in ourselves, all the unrest in society, because deep down we know that what we've created does not do justice to who we are. And so if it doesn't do justice, we have to, it's like an Etch-a-Sketch. You can shake it up and then you start again. Or I'm reminded of the Tibetan sand mandalas. If ever you've seen this, I watched Tibetan monks for a whole day on the ground just create this incredible mandala. I nearly said painstakingly, but it's not painstakingly, it's joyfully. They joyfully created this wonderful mandala of all these colored sands, stood back, admired it, and then swept it away. That is what I seek to reach, that level of creating something, being able to behold its beauty, and then not being attached to it as a form, but not destroying its beauty, but allowing the temporary nature of the form to be recycled so that we can do it again. And I think that is the call of walking this middle path together, is to create a new world together based on what we at Meditation Mount hold, these three principles of essential divinity, where all life is sacred because the spark of the one life lives in all creation. The principle of goodwill, which means that love flows through all things, and the natural urge of the soul is to love and serve. And the principle of unanimity, which says there is a pre-existing state of oneness, of coherence, of interdependency. And those principles form the foundation upon which we seek to build something new together. So let's take a deep breath. This has been quite a journey and will continue to be quite a journey in the coming months and years. And we need to stand centered. We need to walk this middle path and not be thrown off center. So let's take a deep breath together. Stand once again in the chalice of the group heart that we have created. And we observe that our chalice is full the wisdom that we have generated together in this session. And we know that everything that we receive, we bless and we give in blessing to others. So let us imagine our chalice filled with this golden liquid, which is the wisdom of our group soul. And let us pour it out into the world, and we see this golden liquid circulating, entering the hearts of all of our sisters and brothers around the world in our one humanity, touching all beings. And bringing the light of love, the light of wisdom, and the light of new purpose and meaning to our world. And let's do this in 3 breaths, 3 waves. So we do this blessing 3 times as we hear the sound of the Tibetan bowl. We breathe out a second wave of this golden blessing. And for a third time, we see the world filled with the gold of wisdom and love Gold is the color of the soul. Gold is the consummation of the alchemical process that is the walking of the middle path. Another deep breath just to bring ourselves into focus and know that we are part of this Bodhisanga, this beloved community. We're not alone, even though it's tough living in COVID times. But we're also living in times of great rebirth. And with rebirth, we have it preceded by death. So let's hold both life and death simultaneously. And let us walk the middle path together with joy. Thank you so much for your presence and participation this evening. And I bid you farewell from Meditation Mount and blessings on our journey along the middle path.